you.
Yay!
Now that we're talking about glasses.
Welcome everybody. Welcome online people, in-place people. We're a little behind because of tech. We have some panel members who may still be on the way here, so we're just going to wing it. But we're going to start with an announcement from Suzanne. You can come up here.
To get closer?
Well, so the camera will see you right there.
Okay. I'm the treasurer of the Student Association of the Library and Information Studies program, so the acronym is LISA. And I just wanted to announce that we're going to have a what we've titled Landing Your First Job from a Resume to an Interview, which is a little different from today, but the same subject matter. Hi, Greg.
How's it going?
And that's going to be on Wednesday, April 8th from 3 to 4:30. And we're also going to have, we had a snow day for our capstone session, and that will be either March 2nd or 16th. We're in the final stages of deciding, but thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Hope everybody can attend that. Well, this is Career Day. I don't know how many career days we've had, but we always have a great panel of guests, recent graduates who have work experience and job hunting experience to share with you. So what we're going to do this morning is I'm going to pepper them with questions. They think they know all the questions because I gave them I gave them a list of questions, but I usually hold a couple back, just as surprise questions. But we'll start with people introducing themselves once again. Hopefully you saw the flyer. It took me a long time to make that flyer, by the way, because it's not my strong point. But we'll start with the Amandas, and then we'll come down. Greg, scoot over. So go ahead, Miss Amanda.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Amanda Click. I graduated in 2008. And I think I'm sort of here in two capacities. So when I first graduated, I took a job at the American University in Cairo. So I have some international experience. I can talk about that if you're interested. And now I am back in the States and have started the PhD, I'm in my 4th year of the PhD program at UNC Chapel Hill, so in the School of Information and Library Science. So I can talk to you about international stuff and getting a PhD, which is, I will say, it was not something I thought I would do when I was in the program. So if you're thinking that, oh, I'll never do that, you never know.
Never say never.
Right.
Another Amanda.
Hey, I'm Amanda Fonero. I am the Collection Development and User Services Librarian at Center for Creative Leadership. So I am happy to answer any questions you might have about special libraries, corporate libraries.
Okay.
I'm Heather Hans. I'm the Instructional Design and Assessment Librarian at Guilford College. It's a mouthful. And before that, I was at High Point University, so I'm sort of the academic library person. And currently I mainly teach about research and head our instruction program, as well as leading the assessment of the library overall. So that's sort of the main things I do.
Good morning. I'm Susie Collins, and I'm currently in the LIS program here at UNCG, but I'm also, this is my first year as an elementary school librarian, so I can give you a little information about what challenges and different situations that I've seen as a new librarian.
I'm Rachel Walker. I'm Prospect Development Manager at UNC General Administration. I am the non-traditional library careers representative. Prospect Research is fundraising support. So we do research on donors and potential donors to support fundraising efforts at organizations, and I was at Wake Forest in that capacity for 4 years, and I started 6 months ago at General Administration for UNC, which is the system office over the 17 UNC campuses. And my particular role is to build up a prospect research shop to support what we call our emerging campuses. They're the ones, if anybody asks you to name all 17 campuses, those would be the ones you can't remember. And we're trying to do a shared services initiative to provide prospect research support to those smaller campuses and support their very small fundraising activities. So yeah, I'm the non-traditional person here.
Greg?
Hello, my name is Gregory Hill. I'm the circulation librarian at Livingstone College. I recently graduated from the program in 2014 in May. So if you have any questions on academic librarianship, maybe I can help you out with that.
And tech services, you know something about
tech services as well, yeah.
One of Gregory's challenges was changing over the entire collection.
Yeah, right now we're converting our collection from the Dewey Decimal System to Library of Congress.
Oh, goodness.
And we have over like 60,000 books or whatnot. It's a tall task, pretty much.
So if you have some tech services questions,
Yeah.
Greg can ask that too. Okay, so I'm going to start with the questions I actually promised you. So, and you can just jump in, whoever wants to talk about it, but what's the best thing about your job, your work that you do, your professional efforts? What's the best thing? What do you like the most and why? Go ahead, Amanda. I know you want to say something.
I have a lot of development opportunities at work, not specific to librarianship, but I am really lucky to have so much internal development working at a leadership development organization, and no 2 days are the same.
I think people want to know a little bit more about the Center for Creative
Yeah,
Leadership.
so there's a lot of mystery around that. We are not a CIA training facility or a government think tank, which is apparently there's some chain emails floating around. I just want to dispel that. We do leadership development in a lot of contexts. We do that for corporations who hire us to create custom programs for them. Or people will send, companies will send 1 or 2 folks in for our open enrollment programs. And then our Leadership Beyond Boundaries division does a lot of our more mission-driven work. So they do youth leadership development. They do emerging countries, emerging markets, women's leadership development. We've got offices in Ethiopia and South Africa that do a lot of that. We've also got we are a nonprofit, but we have our more business-driven side, and we've got offices in Brussels and Moscow, India. We just opened an office in China, I think. So we're all over the place, and we do all manner of leadership development. Excuse me, from training new managers on things like feedback and evaluation, and just interpersonal processes. We do a little business strategy work as well. So we have a really broad mission, but we want to, through leadership development, improve the world from an individual level, a business level, and a society level.
So when you do the professional development opportunities, it's all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
It's that kind of stuff, and also I've gotten to learn instructional design. I just took a class on format instructional design, so I'm qualified to design programs, and I'm able to do that as a junior designer. So I have a lot of roles at work that I just said, I'm really interested in this, I want to go do this, and they allow me to make time in my day to go work on other departments' projects, and it allows me to develop our collection more fully to meet the needs of those designers and faculty members and support staff that are working on those programs, and also understand all of the functions of the center so that I can develop our collection electronically and print-wise to meet their needs.
So basically, you're still in school.
I think that I will always be in school.
Good answer. Who else? What do you like best about what you do?
I'm really liking teaching. Originally, I found it very anxiety-provoking, but apparently as you do it more, it starts to actually become fun. And I like building relationships with students and faculty. It's cool because I'm at Guilford now, which is a smaller school. It's about 2,300, 2,500 students. So it's been a lot easier to develop relationships with faculty, and I usually meet with them beforehand and talk about their class and maybe even schedule like activities before and after we do a session. And I guess I also like that I'm sort of developing relationships with them that could go beyond just research sessions, so I can help them design their classes, work with our learning management system, and just really be more involved. I'm on some different faculty committees too, which makes me feel very fancy. And also assessment is starting to be cool, also a little daunting when you first start because there's so many options for what you can do to assess the library. So we're starting to develop an actual plan for things we want to know about the library. So it's been cool to get more into that.
Amanda just took her comprehensive exams, so I remember being slightly bitter after that. So there might not be as much fun stuff. But what about the international?
well, actually, so what I would say about what I'm doing now is that, my intention when I finish my PhD is probably not to go teach in a library school. I would prefer to go into leadership or administration somewhere. I want to go back into actually being a librarian. We'll see what actually happens, but that's my tentative plan for now. And what I have really gotten out of this program is I thought I was pretty good at supporting research before. I thought I had a pretty good handle on what faculty needed and what they did, and now I have a much better understanding of that. So I'm a much better researcher myself. I'm really good now at doing my own research, at writing literature reviews, synthesizing literature. I've really been able to develop those skills in the program, and I think that they'll make me a strong librarian and a even stronger librarian in a reference instruction setting when I go back to being a librarian. And then, so I was the coordinator of instruction at the American University in Cairo, and that was my first job at a library school. So I remember standing outside Curry talking to Dr. Shiflett and Dr. Carmichael and saying, "Hey, I had this interview in Cairo," and they thought that was interesting. And it was just an adventure. I mean, I think I'm so glad I did that. It totally has changed the course of my career. It's changed a lot of my professional connections. If you are in I was 26 or 27. I didn't have any real connections to the area or the States even. So it was an easy decision for me, and it would be different at this point in my life. And I'm sure it's different for a lot of you, but if you're looking for an adventure, I would recommend it.
Greg, and then we'll go this way.
I think now, I started out as a paraprofessional. I was a library assistant for 2 years before I started the program. And now, interacting with the faculty, I heard mentioned from someone down there, I'm able to do it now on a much more professional level. I think that makes a big difference when you're coming to work, for work morale as well. And you have a career footing, not only because of the MLIS, but because you know so much information in regards to librarianship that can probably help out other faculty members with their research needs.
You like the faculty? Okay, so. It's like herding cats, we know that.
For me right now, the most exciting thing about my role is that it is building something brand new. There's really no template for this. There are other state school systems that have centralized functions like this, but they also have centralized fundraising. So the University of Texas system, they do all their fundraising from one central office. So for them to have a centralized support function is not that difficult. We're trying to do, the UNC system is a system basically in name alone. All of the 17 schools operate completely individually, and trying to learn the cultures of each of the different programs and what the most important things are for each of them and what the challenges are for each of them. It's incredibly daunting, like you were saying, the possibilities. There's so much you can do, and I just get really excited about the idea of, okay, how can we do this? How can we build this program? What are the things that we can do to best support Elizabeth City? And then what can I do to best support UNC Pembroke? And how do I coordinate all of these things into one office? It's really overwhelming, but I'm also really excited because I just came back from a conference, and something else that's really exciting is that prospect research is a fairly new field. It's been around as long as fundraising has, but as a structured, professional organization thing, it's pretty new. So there's not really a codified, this is the right way to do it. And so even though I did it for 4 years at Wake Forest, I'm finding that the way I did it at Wake, which is a very wealthy private school, is completely different from the approach you take when you're supporting smaller regional public schools that don't have really wealthy alumni. And I just came back from this conference where I learned all kinds of new things about, well, you could try this, and you could try this, and you could try this, and now I'm all revved up again to run in and try applying new things and figuring that out. So there's no right way to do it, and that's horrifying because I am kind of a prescriptive, I want to follow a recipe. I'm not going to make up a recipe. I can't do it. Give me the instructions. So on that level, it's terrifying, but it's also awesome because I can't mess it up if there's no right answer.
And Susie's learning on the job.
I am learning on the job. I was very fortunate, though, because the previous librarian who retired after, I think it was 14 years, had done things, for lack of better words, the old school way. And so now I'm incorporating the technology component and just doing things a lot differently. So everything I do, they think is wonderful. So no matter how bad I mess up, they think I'm wonderful. So the best part is that I am getting to build something new. And in fact, getting ready to rearrange the entire library this summer. And of course, working with the students, although that has its challenges, learning a new set of demographics because I came from a Title I school to a magnet school. So learning the demographics of the students as well as the teachers and the faculty presents its challenges. But I would say that the best part of the job is building something new and everyone being very excited about it.
Okay, excellent answers. Now, you know, since I asked you what the best, most fun part was, we're going to flip that, but instead of saying what's the worst part, we're going to phrase it. We're going to ask you what's the most challenging part of the job or what you're doing now. So we'll just start with Greg and go the other way.
I would say the most challenging aspect of my job is dealing with the budget. You know, it's a private school or whatnot, but we don't have a lot of funds as well, and whenever we're trying to get ready to start projects up, we always kind of run into an issue with lack of funds. So we have a Friends of the Library meeting April the 25th, which will be the first in about 3 years. So hopefully we can find some more donors in the community that maybe can contribute to some of the activities of the library.
You can talk to Rachel about maybe how to prospect. So.
I can try. So by far the hardest thing right now is I didn't realize how good I had it at Wake in terms of our database, in terms of how well people communicated. Something, again, so I talked about the UNC system as a system and name alone and da-da-da. So at universities, different departments don't talk to each other. And at Wake, I didn't appreciate how well advancements database would talk to the admissions database, would talk to the alumni database and all that. And database management and dealing with dirty data has been such a huge challenge for me. The smaller schools that, you know, don't have the budgets, and that's why they need the centralized fundraising help, don't have the staff to keep up with their data, and they don't have their alumni's current addresses. They don't know where people are. One of the schools actually literally lost 15 years of student records. Like, they're in a filing cabinet somewhere, nobody knows where. So there's 15 years of people they don't even know are alumni from somewhere in the mid-60s up to the late 70s. Like, that kind of stuff. For me, that makes me so twitchy. I'm like, where is the data? I want the data to be there. So the not having the access to the data that I need to be able to do this extra research, like having to reconstruct things that should have been there in the first place, you know, from 50 whatever plus years of people not doing good database management, that is hugely challenging. And the range of cleanliness of people's databases across the schools that we support is huge, just from nothing to really awesome, great, you guys are, I love you. So that's really challenging.
Sounds like you've got guaranteed work for a while.
Yeah, and it's not, what's frustrating is it's not work I was expecting to have. Like, again, I didn't know how spoiled I was where I came from.
It's a matter of scale.
Yes, exactly.
And money.
Yeah.
Well, my undergraduate was not in education, so I came into this position from being a teacher assistant and working with students in a computer lab. So when you put kids in front of a computer, they love you and they do exactly what you ask them to do. Now I'm in front of students as a librarian, trying to engage them in library lessons, which is trial and error for me this year, as well as actually, it's a great thing. I have flexible scheduling, but trying to figure out the entire scheduling process, because this is a science and technology school. Science and technology are part of the rotation, and the library isn't. So trying to figure out their needs, getting them into the library, marketing the library, and learning the administrative side. So it's a lot of challenges for me this year.
I think that's always true with teaching. It's just try it and see how it goes, though. So
it is a lot of trial and error.
I would definitely say there's trial and error no matter what.
Yeah.
I think the big challenge for me is prioritizing my workflow, because I was probably doing slightly more than one job at HPU, but at Guilford it's definitely more like two, and we're understaffed in our department. And we've kind of also extended, well, we're more ambitious than perhaps we were in the past as far as what we want to accomplish with instruction and assessment. So we're trying to do something that has more value, but with not enough people. And that may be pretty common as librarians in at least some libraries. But I'm a pretty good project manager, and I'm pretty good at keeping up with a lot of details. And even I've reached a point where I'm like, okay, sometimes I just can't look at this to-do list anymore because I'm going to go crazy. So I think kind of just stepping back and trying to just go with the flow and see how each week plays out has made a big difference in just sort of following my instincts and trying to decide what for the whole college is the most important. So I think the relationships with faculty and our library instruction sessions come first, but I have to make sure assessment doesn't fall by the wayside, because that's what happens everywhere, is that's the last thing you think about. So I'm trying to find some proactive ways, and then just figuring out, if you don't have as many people, how can you compensate for that, or have students help, have people do less but do more important things, etc. So just kind of, I guess, trying to figure out what's possible and do as much as we can.
Do you feel like you're spinning plates, juggling,
definitely,
to keep everything
Mm-hmm.
going?
Yeah, and I'm usually pretty good at that, but this is like a whole new level of that. So I'm prone to be overly ambitious anyway, so I've had to sort of work against my own instincts and decide whether what I want to do is reasonable.
I'm not so good at deciding whether I want to do is reasonable. I usually rely on other people to tell me that's not reasonable, which is my big challenge at CCL is managing. So I write our budget, advocate for our budget, and then manage all of our spending to make sure we fall in line with all the things that I've asked for. And right now so it seems that every year that I'm there, I'm asking for some big new expensive thing. We have traditionally been a very print library. We've got 150 print journals, we have e-access to many of those, but no discovery system, no way to index those at the article level, so we have no way to find them. And so I've got, an Excel spreadsheet of, if you need this, go here. If you need this, go here. I recently got us upgraded from an EBSCO database called Business Source Corporate to Business Source Corporate Plus, which gives us a lot more full text and more indexing. But now I want a discovery system that will integrate that with the things that we've got access to through publisher sites that are not indexed by EBSCO. And so that's a whole other hundreds of thousands of dollars that I'm asking the organization for. And so it's hard to say to an organization that is typically valued print, we're global now, it's important that we have these electronic resources. It's hard enough to get them to value the library as a resource, particularly the executive team who isn't using the library on a daily basis. And then above and beyond that to say, like, you should really value us because we're doing all these great services, but we could be doing more, so give us more money. That's a real struggle. And then also knowledge management, which I know you hate that word, it is a huge part of my job right now. Our organization.
If you can manage people's knowledge, then you go, girl.
I am the person in the organization who is, so our organization has said we want a knowledge management strategy. So they put all these task forces together, and people said, like, this is the important information in SharePoint, which is our content management system for the whole organization. This is the important stuff to tag and create a system for and all of this. And so I was the one saying, like, well, really all of our value is in tacit knowledge, in subject matter experts and faculty members who understand things that are going to bring us more business, are going to help us deliver our product better. Like, they have all of that in their heads. And so the organization said, we'll do interviews and download their knowledge.
Wow.
So I'm struggling a lot. Yeah, it really is.
I see the Matrix.
And so we spend all this money on interviewers to come in and do interviews and get all of this into make tacit knowledge explicit knowledge. And now it sits in a SharePoint site that nobody looks at. Mm-hmm. And when somebody needs something, they still go down the hall to somebody's office. Yeah. So how do we, network? How do we do expertise management so that people know where to go? They're spending less time emailing around, who knows this, who knows that. And so I'm really interested in integrating we've got 2 subject matter experts in social networks. And so getting them to come in and create a system for us that will help network our organization so that people know where to go.
So I think I'll talk about AUC because as a student, the challenging thing is that I'm lonely doing all this solitary work. And that's really not that interesting to talk about unless you want to hear about my cat. 30 minutes in a library event with only 1 cat mentioned.
Cats will get you through a dissertation.
I hope so. So the biggest challenge at AUC was basically just walking this cultural line. Mm-hmm. So the university is an American-style university. The language of instruction is English. All coursework, except for Arabic language courses, and business are supposed to be conducted in English, right? But it's still a university that's, the vast majority of the staff are Egyptians, and a lot of the faculty are Egyptians, and almost all the students are. So, things on paper, things are supposed to run like you'd expect them to run at UNCG, but that's not always how it goes in actuality. So, it took a year or so to really kind of develop an understanding of how things are actually going to work and the ways that you actually need to get things done. It's much more of like a face-to-face, like get to know people, build relationships in order to accomplish things. And I learned some very valuable interpersonal and other types of lessons there, but that was the biggest challenge, was figuring out how to walk that cultural line.
Did you have help with that from the institution, or were they just sort of thrown out in the river and go swim?
Right. Well, they did a very extensive orientation, but that was mostly for a bunch of foreign faculty coming in, right? And that was kind of practical stuff, like there are a lot of wild cats here. Don't touch them or you will get rabies. This is what you do if you do get rabies. So there was like health stuff and how to get your cell phone and how to, all this kind of practical stuff. But from that, you did build a very tight support group of other expats who have all showed up there together. But so many of the people that you're working with, you're not only working with foreigners. So you're getting information from, first of all of the expats are learning and sharing what they've learned, and then your colleagues and your students are mostly Egyptian, so you're learning from them as well. So I would say there was an official support system for learning how to function, but the learning how to actually function was
the underground.
Right. That was not official.
I think to a lesser extent that happens at every library and institution. Mm-hmm. Like the way I contacted and connected with people at HPU was very different from Guilford. I know that adds a whole other element, but I think you do spend a lot of time, like in your first months to year, trying to figure out the best way to get in
where
touch
those
with
communication
people
ends
and,
are.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's
a good point.
So all of you experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. And for me, it's exponential because I have to figure that out at each institution that we're supporting.
Yeah, 17?
We support 10, so there's 7 schools that basically don't need help, which are fine. But yeah, it's the exact same thing. And not only is it figuring out who to contact and who's going to get things done for you, but also the politics at each institution of who's going to be mad at you if they're not in the loop and like that kind of stuff. Like I know it's going to take me forever to learn that, and then on top of that there's so much flux in leadership, and especially in the fundraising field, people rotate out. They say fundraisers, average life of a fundraiser at an institution these days is like 3 to 4 years. So like you're just going to make your relationships with them and then they're going to leave. And a lot of places have new vice chancellors coming in that are over advancement, and so it's like just when you adjust to it, people are going to be gone.
So sticking with this for a bonus round question, so what can you advise people? So we're going to talk about getting jobs in the next question, but we'll just go ahead with where we are now. So any advice for how you know, you enter a new organization where things are already in place, and how do you navigate, you know, the first couple months, you know, years, you know, just getting to know, because you're thinking you're coming in to do a job. And so, yeah, you have to learn the job, but you have to learn the culture and that way the culture thinks and how it runs. The fact that Susie came in and doing things that are new, they could have just as well turned and gone, we never have done it that way.
Right.
And I've heard that.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Or we did it this way.
Yeah, so, and because we send shiny new people out, and they know all this new current stuff, but then you come up against, no, we can't do that. So how was that entry into your positions? How well did you navigate?
I think asking a lot of questions and also asking who is the person for this a lot comes in handy, and also maybe just first developing relationships with your own fellow colleagues, staff members, and trying to sort of, I don't know, almost informally interview them about what they know about how things have gone before. I think I've had to build a context for what a lot of the instruction and assessment was like beforehand before I could kind of add to it. I'm also prone to be really annoying when I'm new, so, you know, like, but we should do it this way, and it would be so much better. And it is good if you can try to stay quiet, at least for a little bit, and take it in, even if you are brilliant and have so many amazing ideas, or just, you know, coax them slowly toward them and give reasons why it might be an advantage, and, you know, try to demonstrate like why you're valuable before you tell them why you also know so many wonderful things. I think I'm getting better at that. I could ask my colleagues. I don't know. So far, I haven't driven anyone crazy as far as I can tell. And thankfully, I did come in the same time several other people on my team did. So, and we were kind of on the same page. So we were able to move forward a lot quicker. But I guess that's some of my early advice.
And I would kind of piggyback on that and say, so I came out of grad school going like, I have a master's degree in this. Like, I have a master's degree. That means something. So you people should listen to me. And now, oh my gosh, I was so dumb, you guys. I thought I had all the answers for CCL and for any, like, I came out of here with this vision of here's how libraries should work. And every library is so different, and until you come in and understand the culture and understand how the people you're serving organize information in their brains and on their desktops, and until you know how they search for information, like you have no idea how to serve them. So being open to not putting aside your own expertise and being like having a beginner's mind and saying like, let me just answer your questions, your immediate, how do I find this information? And then think about questions you can ask them. Who else did you ask for this information before you came to me? Or did you send out 3 emails at the same time, all asking these people because you think they might have the answer, and also I'm the librarian, so you'll add me on too. Understanding those networks are going to be really helpful in setting up systems to help people find information more efficiently and knowing what information they want.
Okay.
So I think there's actually some value in finding whoever, not the gossipers, but the people who are willing to
divulge the most.
Yes, exactly. Who will? So at Wake,
Say that out loud so I can hear it.
Yeah.
Divulge the most information.
Yeah.
Yes. So at Wake, this is my experience at Wake, is that there was an awful lot of secretiveness around. There's 2 sets of people at Wake. There were the people who had gone to the school, had grown up in the area, had deep ties to the school, had been there 20, 25 years, and then there were new people. And the people who were there forever were very insular and very cliquish and very, this is the Wake Forest way, and you don't ever say a bad thing about the school. Not that I'm saying you should bash the school, but there are certain things that was like, I need to know what this background is. So it took me a little while to find the person who had been there 25 years who was willing to say, this is that background story, and this is why you do not ask this person about that person. Because, like, otherwise, believe me, I know in retrospect, if I had asked the wrong person about that, that would have made my life miserable. But at UNC, I'm very fortunate that my boss is that person who knows, like, you have to be really careful with this person, how you talk. Like, for example, some of the schools, it's okay to be on first names. Some of the schools, it's Mr. and Miss whatever. And that, I'm so not used to the Mr. and Miss thing. And I made one mistake calling the vice chancellor like by her first name, not to her face, but in an email I was writing to somebody. And that person didn't say anything to me, but they said something to my boss's boss, like, well, you know, at this school, we do not refer to the vice chancellor by her first name. I'm like, whoa, all right. So from then on, I'm like going into my boss's office, like, Erin, can you please tell me, like, how do I have to handle the people at this school? So I think there's a lot of value in finding the person who's going to be honest with you and tell you this is how it is. Just as long as you keep a good awareness of where to tell the line is gossip. It really does. It's ridiculous.
You are probably afraid to make a mistake.
Yes.
So
Yes.
before you send anything to anyone.
Yes, exactly. It's really, yeah. Unfortunately, again, at Wake, I got very good at, so something else that's been interesting about my role is it's customer service. You don't think of it that way. But it's similar to reference desk stuff in that you're doing service for a person. You need to approach them with the appropriate amount of respect and whatever else. And I learned at Wake how to write emails in such a way that, you know, you're giving a question, you always preface it with, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. Here's what I can do for you. I found really judiciously used exclamation points can completely change the tone of your entire email. So I've gotten really good at writing emails that are like fall over backwards. Like, actually, I learned that at UNCG running the purchasing card program too, because boy, people get bent out of shape about what they can't do on their P cards. I did that for 1.5 years, and I never need to do that again. It was awful, awful. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that.
Well, I can appreciate all the information and advice you all have just given, but I can tell you one magical thing, and that is food. Chocolate and food. I just recently set up a baked potato bar for all the teacher assistants because they had been feeling very stretched. They've been using them for coverage for testing and for all these different things that they were doing, and I could hear all the little complaints. And then they were told, you have to come to the library with your classes. Well, that made me very unpopular. So very quickly, I got together this baked potato bar with chili and cheese and chocolate, and they love me now. So, can I say?
Good advice.
I agree. Bribery is important.
Yeah, food is great.
Oh yeah.
I would say also keep a good relationship with those in the IT department. And our school,
yeah.
you know, they pretty much have most of the power when it comes to like our technical stuff or whatnot. So yeah, try to keep a good relationship with those guys.
But if you can't,
Right.
if you can't,
Yeah.
do what you can without having to ask permission if you are not able to maintain a relationship with
Librarian
them.
power.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, this is open
survey the
source.
IT yourself,
Take it.
huh?
We're sort of at Gopher, we're halfway in between. Like, we're responsible for the instructional aspects, but we have to work with IT for some of the more system, server, etc. And we're trying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just try to do the best you can. Try to do everything else you can
Yeah.
without other departments.
The IT department is the patriarchy.
Oh yeah.
They're like,
Oh, yeah.
they're like, we're gonna tell you what you're allowed to do, and I'm like, no, you're not.
Well, what's so funny about that is that.
forgiveness and to beg for permission.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what's so funny about that is, so one of the challenges I'm having now is how am I sharing information with these different schools? Because everybody's on their own systems and everybody's on their own databases. How do I securely get their info and get my info back to them? So we actually had touched base with the VP for IT at GA, General Administration, UNCGA, sorry, just lots of abbreviations, to try to say from the beginning, like, we want you in the loop. We want to make sure that we're doing everything according to, you know, state regulations, university regulations. And he was, you know, we had a meeting with him. He was like, thank you so much for actually asking. I really appreciate you're trying to get me in the loop. And then has not responded to a single email, phone call, anything in months. So I'm at the point now, I'm just going to go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And say, we've been trying to reach you. This is not our fault.
No, I think that's a good point that you should try to make sure to include all parties that seem relevant.
Right.
And again, that's another asking questions to make
Right,
sure
yeah.
who should be involved when I'm doing this type of project. But there also may be a point at which they're not going to be helpful. So you have to have backup ideas.
We're going to switch over to a different question now. Great discussion. You guys are doing great. People are probably getting a little nervous about job hunting. One of my former grad assistants, Terry Hopgood, was on this panel last year, and he had posted to Facebook that, you know, looking for jobs was soul crushing. And he hadn't graduated yet, so, you know, he was applying for jobs before he graduated, getting rejected, and having his soul crushed. So, how did you go about finding your job? What was your experience with job hunting? And what kind of advice might you give to the stressed people that are concerned about job hunting?
Okay, well, I'm going to give you the best piece of advice that I have, which comes from my dad, so I'm going to give my dad credit for this. But when I was looking for jobs, I would read a job description and then be like, oh, I don't know if I really fit that. And he said, don't take yourself out of it. Let them decide that.
Right.
I know it's like a lot of work to, well, just write your cover letter. It's not that hard, right? Just make sure that you, you know, do the work, write your cover letter, send it out, and like let them decide that you aren't a good fit for that job. You know, I'm not saying that you need to like go out this month and apply for all these dean of library positions or whatever.
Paper, you know, everybody with a
right, exactly. But I mean, just because there's one thing under preferred qualifications that doesn't match you, you know, it's okay. So just don't take yourself out of the running.
Excellent.
Network like crazy. I know that networking sucks, and it really is not like a fun idea. People don't get excited about it, but when you're actually doing it, so networking sounds a lot like self-promotion, and that's not it. Like, it's really about give and take. And
not that there's anything wrong with self-promotion.
True, right. And as librarians, we must all advocate for ourselves. But for me, when I reframe networking as like, what can I do for this person that will put them, you know, like I'm going to do something really generous and wonderful, and then they're going to want to be generous and wonderful to me.
Right.
And they're also going to see me as a great fit for whatever friends of theirs or organizations they know need a librarian. So I got my job because I was doing a contract position for the Fisher Park Neighborhood Association and putting together their archive. And I did not know that the woman who brought me on and was the president of the neighborhood association, I thought she was just like a rich lady who hung out at home all day. Turns out she sells databases, and she was the database vendor for CCL. So once I finished that project, she said, here's a job description I think you'd be great for. I'm letting them know to look for your email.
Yeah, and I think I agree about networking, and I try to just, I don't know, meet a lot of people and then keep in touch with the people I find interesting and find a connection with, because it's hard for me to focus on the self-promotion aspect. To me, for the job search, I think it comes down to skills. It's a very skills-based profession, and almost every job is already going to expect you to have experience. So I think doing as many internship and volunteer experiences throughout is probably, and gathering as many skills, both technical and instructional and whatever else. Sorry, I'm running out of adjectives. Even if you may be already working full time, even if you can just have like one more day where you do volunteer work or do something online or whatever, I think it's going to come down to how many of your skills match the job. And usually that's also how I look at cover letters. Like, it's more of a matching game. I try to make it like a game, because if I start talking, kind of to your point, if I start just thinking about, well, I'm not that awesome, I don't know if I'm really like this material, that's really not going to help anybody. So I try to just, compare my experience to the job I'm looking at and match up what I've done with what they're looking for. And I don't agree. I don't think it has to be a perfect fit either, but I think,
if there are 3 major things in that job description that you can cover in your cover letter, well,
yeah,
go for it.
Yeah, definitely. And then also I think a lot of it comes down to writing. Your cover letter does need to sound good, but not sound ridiculously arrogant. So again, that's why I like the matching thing, because it's more about things I've done. I don't really like talking about myself in general, but I'm okay with talking about things I've worked on and things I've done, because I like doing that stuff. So yeah, that's my main advice.
Well, networking is how I got the job that I'm in now. And I've been with the school system more than 10 years, 15, 20 maybe. But I started out as a reading tutor, and then was moved to a Title I school as their tech assistant, and got to know a lot of principals' wives that would come in to tutor. So I would talk to them. I actually have a relative who is a principal. So, just letting them know what it is that you want to do. And also the field experience that I did through UNCG was very helpful. I would say take full advantage of that. You can come to my library. I would love that. But yes, anytime that you can use, for especially the school system, if you can get in to volunteer, there is a background check that you have to complete, but get in there, volunteer. There are people that want you there. And also, one plug for the Alumni Association. My husband is the president of the Alumni Association, and wanted me to tell you that there are 6 clubs across the United States. There's all different kinds of events. The Alumni Association, just like the LIS department, will put you with a mentor. They can also connect you with someone who's already in the field, and you use it because it will help.
So I can talk about this from the point of view of a hiring manager. I just literally just finished hiring my second researcher who's going to be working with me at GA, and was involved in some hiring stuff at Wake Forest. So customize your cover letter. One of the first things that will get on my nerves is if I can tell, first of all, if you've copy and pasted your cover letter and then forgot to change all the references to the job you're applying for, you are going in my discard pile. I don't care what else you've got going on. Because especially in this role, we do a lot of synthesizing information and a lot of communicating the information back. So if you can't even pay attention to details in your job application, forget it, you're out. That makes me crazy. And if your cover letter, I try not to be quite so judgmental about this, but I want your cover letter to be addressing the job you're applying for. If your resume doesn't immediately jump out to me as this applies to what I'm looking for, your cover letter had better explain to me, this is why my experience makes me good for this job, even though nothing else. So the girl I just hired, she is fresh out of school. She's a history and writing double major, and the only work experience she's had is retail. She worked in the kitchens at her school, and then she has been working at Lowe's while she's been looking for a real job. And normally would have thrown her out completely, but her cover letter was really eloquent, really explained very well, this is why my educational experience would apply to this job, this is why this is interesting to me. And she wouldn't even have gotten to a phone interview screening if she hadn't explained so well in her cover letter, like, this is why I think I should be able to do this job. So you have no idea how important that stuff really is to the people who are actually looking at your resumes. Now, to your point about if there's one thing on your qualification list, oh, we want 2 to 3 years of experience. For some reason, everybody puts that in a job description, and it's stupid. Like, there are things, especially, I don't know if you've ever heard this kind of thing happens in the tech world all the time. We want 5 years of experience with this programming language that didn't actually exist 5 years ago. Because HR writes a lot of these job descriptions and they don't know what they're talking about. So yes, it is true, if there's like one thing on there that doesn't apply to you, that's fine. But on the other hand, hiring managers get really annoyed when you're clearly just blanketing resumes at something you have absolutely nothing to do with. So don't be honest with yourself if you're wasting your time and you're just applying to things to apply to them. Yeah. Also, if you actually get, a response in an interview and, whatever, make sure that you're communicating appropriately with the hiring manager. I had somebody very recently who misspelled my name on every email she sent me, which is really, really irritating. There was no salutations on the email. It was just flat out, the kind of very informal, which really turned me off, because again, I talked about, I have to be so careful in how I communicate with the people that I'm working with. If I'm bringing you into a job where you're going to be expected to be communicating with people, again, if you can't communicate appropriately with me and I might be hiring you, you're out. So there's so many common sense job things that people don't do, and it's bewildering.
It's not common.
Well, no, but I mean the kind of things that you're like, I thought everybody knew. They know, people don't. So I mean, go make good use of your career center. Make good use of resume reviews. Make good use of cover letter reviews and practice interviews and that kind of thing. Because again, I hold your life in my hands. Not literally, but you know, and yeah, just think about how you're presenting yourself.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
At the elementary school level, one thing that I did, because the principal was looking for, and I asked her, I said, what is it are you looking for in your media center? And she said, I need somebody to come in and reorganize, clean up. So one of the things that I did to show that I was very organized is when I went for my interview, I found their mascot, which is a gator, USB gator, and gave her that. That had all of the coursework and things that would be interesting for them on that, and as well as a portfolio that had my name, Collins, and it was a card. Each was an acronym for something. So I had every little thing they could pull out, and it was very organized. So that was kind of cutesy, but it was neat for elementary level.
I was going to say, I would hire you in a heartbeat if you did all that stuff for me. That's awesome.
I would say networking, also your internships, they're very important as well. Working in my library, I learned some different things at the Kannapolis Research Center. I worked at their library to do my internship, and I brought some things back to my library that I didn't know as far as before working there. So I think that's very important. Join as many associations as you can, maybe. The North Carolina Library Association, American Library Association. Also conferences, try to attend as many, just to kind of get a feel of, how libraries around the nation, not only locally or with statewide, how they're doing as well.
How many of you did a practicum when you were in the program?
I haven't got there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I did the independent
The
study
independent
at
studies,
work.
we did,
Yeah.
or an
Or
independent study
internships.
where the internships.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's good advice, so everybody should probably pay close attention
I think you
to
should
that.
be trying to do at least one internship, if not more than one.
Yeah, even if you're working full time too, yeah.
Yeah, I worked full time and did 4 internships or volunteerships.
Yeah.
And some independent studies
Mhm,
too. So.
yeah.
Okay, so here's.
Can I add one thing really quick?
Go ahead.
Sorry, to the whole networking question. If there's a listserv or discussion boards or something like that for your selected area, particularly once you're in the profession, when you're, you want to be networking to figure out where you're going to go next, it's really important to do that. Like, I'm really active on a lot of the prospect research listservs, and I know the names of the people who participate and give really good advice. I also know the names of the people who give terrible advice but think they're really smart. So, I mean, that goes really far. People will start to recognize your name.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
And
remember
people who have
people on
bad
listservs
listserv
who
etiquette.
waste my time.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So that's that. Don't
Did everyone see the
underestimate.
NCLA thing about clip art? I thought I was gonna die. It's like, seriously, Google that.
Right, yeah.
Free clip art. Don't
Yeah.
send it to the listserv. Actually, I will say that the 5th person to respond to that had a really cool LibGuide, but it wasn't worth the 20 emails I saw.
Okay, so we'll get to professional activities in future questions, so we'll get to that too. But while we're talking about getting your jobs, reflect back on your time in the program. And so what advice do you have for current students to maximize their time and effort while they're doing things in the program, so that when it comes time to get the job and start the job, how can they do that better? What should they be kind of looking out for? Like, do practicum, do internships, along that line.
Just something just specific about the practicum. I just wanted to say that's where I got my teaching experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So user education or whatever, I forget what the course is called, wasn't taught. I didn't take it because it was only taught once while I was there, and I missed that. So I did a practicum with Linda Kellum and Amy Harris, and that's where I got all the teaching experience I got while I was in school, volunteering and helping them teach courses. So that was really helpful. I mean, a lot of the jobs you're going to apply for require instruction in some form, so it's good to be able to talk about that.
It's kind of like, if you could do this all over again, what might you have done differently when you were in the program, and what to watch out for.
And then one of my other small ones is since I graduated, I like doing my own research, and I try to get involved in publishing and then the literature pretty quickly. And so one of my colleagues from UNCG, I still work. we worked really well together in the program, and now we still like do research and publish together. And even when we were 7 time zones apart, she is just the person that I work with really, really well. And every other person I've collaborated with gets compared unfavorably to her. But so just as you're going through your program, is if you find this person that you connect with professionally and or otherwise and work well together, Claire and I we've gone to London and Albuquerque, like we presented together all over the world, and it's been very good support for each other. So keep an eye out for that person who's like your research career bestie.
Yeah, I think your fellow students are really good. We don't talk as much about that, but I really like having those relationships from grad school because we still stay in touch, and I know what's going on with them and learn much more about librarianship, and also have people to call on either with questions or to present or work on projects with.
Group.
Yes, definitely. Also, I was going to say taking courses with tech or media components, learning as many of those. I took media production like first semester, and I think I've used almost all of those programs and knowing how they all work together and being able to create media projects. I was a little daunted by, like, for example, Fatih's metadata class, but maybe I should have. I mean, it's cool to have as much technical experience as possible too, because I still wonder, or like he had a cool database design class, which really sounded daunting. But I do find a lot of systems and software interesting, and at least I've learned enough that I could keep going from there. But I'd recommend kind of branching out as much as you can to get different software and media and design experience as you can.
I wish I had put a little more time when I was in school. I wish that I had researched major issues in libraries, in special library. I wanted to be in public libraries, so I had a really strong point of view on specific issues in public libraries, but don't limit yourself because you'll wind up someplace you never thought you would. And now I'm in a special library, and I've got a point of view about knowledge management. I've got, a point of view on issues that affect my library, and I wish I had been able to come into an interview and speak really clearly about those things. I did do a little research before my interview and was able to start to impress them with things I reiterated out of a Harvard Business Review article. But yeah, I mean, I would be really impressed if somebody came to an interview right out of school and could articulate a point of view about knowledge management or another issue that our library was facing.
Yeah, I agree with not limiting yourself, because even if you have an idea, like for example, of a different department or area in librarianship you like, they usually all interrelate. So like a lot of times, for example, if I'm in research and instruction, I still need to know what the other departments are doing and understand like what their challenges are and how their problems affect my problems and how we can work together. So even if you're not going to be cataloging things or setting up a search tool or something like that, you still need to know how those like things affect your job. So I agree with the like sort of don't narrow your studies too much and not understand a lot of aspects of librarianship.
You need to know how to talk to a cataloger. It's a lot like talking to a programmer. That's a really specific,
To sort of piggyback off of that, coming from the non-traditional standpoint, I knew I didn't want to be a librarian when I was in the program. I was much more interested in the information side. So it shames me to admit this in front of all of you, but there were a couple of classes that were required that I said, this only has to do with libraries. Why the heck do I have to take this class? And was very internally dismissive of that kind of stuff. That in retrospect, I wish I had worked harder myself to say, here is how this can be extrapolated and not applied strictly to library issues, like cataloging. Now I see, like when I was in cataloging, I'm like, I don't see where this is going to help me in anything besides libraries. But it comes back to the whole dirty data thing, that like having taken the cataloging class, I'm like, if only the people who were working in this database had understood how important, like if they had taken that class. So if it, to the whole, like, you think you know what you want to do, just try really hard to see how anything that you're doing is applicable to anything you want to do. And by the same token, something I did do, and I'm glad I did, was I was in this career already when I was in school. So as many times as I possibly could when I had a project, I did it within my field. Like I did an independent study that I did a whole needs assessment at work for, you know, the information needs that were being met. And I think if I hadn't done that, I don't know if I would have gotten the job I have now, because that was the first thing I did when I got into this job, was to do a needs assessment across all of the different campuses. And I think being able to speak to that and say, I conducted this assessment for school when I was at my job for school, and this is what I learned about it. I think that was part of what really impressed them and got me this job.
Yeah. Along the same lines, going beyond just your coursework with or using your coursework to do independent research is really important. Like, for example, I took an independent study with Julie, and it's okay, you're going to remember this. Okay. In information behavior and library ethnography, and I actually studied Guilford College, so I was in their library doing observations every week. This was while I was still in grad school, so I ended up there. Like, it was really funny because I could talk about 2 years ago I did a study on you guys, and here's my what I wrote up as recommendations. Is cool because they're doing some of it. Like, they abandoned using the reference desk, and I don't know, they're making some other space changes. Also, I did a lit review that it seemed like I was never going to finish because I couldn't give up on reading and adding to. But now we're trying to redesign most of our library spaces, and I already know a lot of what people were talking about changing spaces and what might be necessary in the future, just because I read so much of that. So I agree with trying to have those real practical research projects, and also possibly going beyond to study them further can help a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, still being in the program, I will say be careful with your plan of study. I thought that I could get the MLIS and instructional design at the same time. So I was kind of unique, and I think it was kind of in the works, and then it just kind of fell apart. So I'm a little bit behind in getting out when I had planned to. So be careful with that, and make sure you meet with your advisor regularly.
I would say meet deadlines. That's the most important thing, while you're in the program. It applies also to when you're starting out on your job or whatnot. Let's see. And also, I was working in the academic library, so I made sure I was going to take a course that actually, related to what my job is. So I took the academic library with Dr. Carmichael. I also took the history of librarianship. There were a lot of different courses that I made sure I wanted to take to kind of, will fill into my role or whatnot. So that's always key as well.
So let's talk a little bit about professional activities. And so, what are you involved in, and how have they helped you, and maybe where you might think about going in the future with professional activities? Rachel, you just went to a conference.
Yeah, I was going to say, the listservs and conferences, again, my field is so specialized. It's such a niche field, and it's such a brand new, and everybody's throwing a lot of stuff against the wall and seeing what'll stick. That the best thing you can do is find out what everybody else is doing, and then figure out if you can do it. So this conference is really, I've been to a lot of really crappy conferences. This one was fabulous. It was so good. But part of what makes it really tricky is that people talk about, for example, one of the presenters who did quite a few sessions is coming from Harvard. And what Harvard's idea of a good prospect is, and somebody you're going to spend a lot of time on, is completely different scale from what UNC Pembroke is looking at. So she did a whole session that I didn't even bother going to about Silicon Valley and understanding the way investments and vested stock options and bonuses work. And I'm like, there is no way any of this is going to apply to me in any way, shape, or form. Now, it's best practices for a bigger school, but what's best practices for one place is not going to be best practices for another place. So, I mean, actually, there was a keynote speaker who talked about how much he hates the phrase best practices. See, yeah, exactly. because it's best practices for your institution. And this is just as true with libraries. You have different demographics, you have different customer bases. And again, to come back to the challenges in my job, I'm trying to juggle the customer bases, demographics, culture of several different schools, and trying to switch and midstream depending upon which one I'm supporting. So, I mean, I think expanding and learning as much as you can about what other people do, but don't try to force that paradigm. Ooh, speaking of words I hate. Don't try to force that onto your organization. Just, I think being in contact with as much any other places as possible. And that's where the listservs come in too.
I would say just kind of explore a little bit and don't spread yourself too thin, right? Like check out an NCLA conference, maybe go to ALA or LOX or ACRL and just see what you like best. I've definitely gone through periods where I just kind of took a shotgun approach and I was like, whoa, I'm involved in too many things, and it would really be better if I had been a little more selective and said, I'm really going to devote myself to this committee or this group. So, I would say, yeah, just check out your options and see what really speaks to you and what you're getting the most out of.
Yeah, I think I, especially as a student, tried to get to a variety of conferences, and now I'm a bit more selective. But the good thing is, we've got 3, possibly now 4 library programs, because I guess East Carolina just got...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But anyway, we've got a lot of librarians and also a lot of conferences in the state. So beyond NCLA, like Metrolina, what else? There's other things. I don't know. So other smaller things here will have conferences like Ideal Summit, etc. Launch. Actually, I'm presenting at Launch this year with 2 colleagues. So there's usually quite a few local conferences, so you don't feel like you have to go, way far away to learn more.
And spend the money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money too. Yeah, so you also have to be more selective for those reasons. Also, there's a lot of free webinars. And if you're already a member of NCLA, I know they send it out every month that North Carolina, I don't know if it's through the state library, they send out a list of all the webinars.
I think it is.
And almost all of them are free. There's some that are paid that are not a huge fee, but I usually don't bother. But there's a lot of free ones too that are sometimes through different vendors, different educational institutions, and could help you at any point. And they're usually more specific, so you can find an exact, skill or type of work that you want to learn more about.
And just real quick, I want to add on the conferences thing. All conferences are not created equal. This is my experience from my very particular professional niche, but there are some organizations that are basically like, oh, you want to volunteer to speak? Great, just show up. No vetting, no making sure that somebody actually knows what they're talking about or what the description that they provided for their seminar is actually what the seminar is going to be about. And I have learned that the hard way, spending a lot of money traveling and going to ones and being like, this really stunk, which is why this conference, the one I just came back from, I'm so excited about because it was awesome. And I've been to some really crappy ones. So, again, that's where it comes back to the whole, the only way you're going to find that out is either by going, wasting the money and wasting the time, or by communicating and networking with your colleagues, and they'll tell you, that one's not really worth your time. But don't go to a conference just to go to a conference. You need to make sure it's actually good.
Yeah, and you can look at the sessions, too, to see if any of them, relate, and the title shouldn't be too vague. It has to be specific enough that you're that's something I don't know about this area.
Right.
It shouldn't... Yeah, there should be something that creates a question in your mind. It shouldn't be too general.
Yeah, also just because a conference is in a major city such as Vegas, right? It doesn't mean it's going to be the best conference.
Right, exactly.
You want to make sure you go to some, make sure the events are worthwhile or whatnot. But just because you're in Vegas, don't think it's going to be great. We're in Vegas.
Just everyone. That's an ALA reference, I assume.
Yeah.
Almost everyone hated that conference.
It was hot.
It was hot, and everything was so far away from where we were staying at.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
ALA's got some issues.
Yeah.
I've actually only been to one conference, and that was before I got my job. That was the librarian to librarian at ECU, which was really good because Dr. Chow and Dr. Morris and a fellow student that were presenting. So that was one of the reasons I went, but it was a great experience. And then UNCG had a makerspace workshop, I guess. It was in Raleigh, and although I live here, my daughter is in school in Raleigh, so that's a good, excuse to go. And that was really good, and that didn't cost anything, so those are good opportunities.
Take advantage of UNCG hosts, or at least when I was here, hosted a lot of conferences. I went to SNCCA here, which was incredible. It's by far my favorite conference I've been to. Society of North Carolina Archivists. Okay. I met the most interesting people. Archivists do the wackiest stuff, you guys. And it was just it was just like I was in awe the whole time I was there, and it was really inspirational about where I wanted to go with my career, and I met people who were doing things that I hadn't even thought of. So I would say while you're a student, go to as many conferences as you can. Because when you get a job, you won't be able to afford them anymore.
That's definitely true.
Yeah, it's a dream of mine to have an SLA membership.
Yeah, I've kind of given up on some of my memberships this year until there's a reason that they're going to be helpful.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my organization to pay for it.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. Ideally, your organization may be able to help fund, but depends on the place. I haven't actually been anywhere that has wanted to fund very much, so I don't know how common that is.
It used to be common at CCL, and then there were budget cuts, so now I'm advocating to bring that back.
Yeah.
Often at conferences, meeting people is the most energizing thing.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes the sessions are good, and sometimes they just have no relationship to what you thought they were going to be.
Exactly.
Or they just weren't good. So, it's really about networking more. Okay, so we have professional activities. Here's one that you haven't been prepared for. What would you, if you could go in your time machine and do this program again, what do you wish the program could have offered or should have offered that wasn't offered that would help you doing what you do now? What could we do better to prepare you for job hunting and the jobs that you've done?
I could jump on that immediately. There was not, in my opinion, when I was in the program, there was not enough offered to the I side as opposed to the L side. I think they have changed the curriculum a lot. I only graduated in 2013. I started in 2010, and even while I was there, the program was changed to an extent. But I do wish that if we're going to be an MLIS school, that there was more I. So that's, again, I know we have a lot of school librarian track stuff here, so I understand, the L emphasis. But if we're going to, because library jobs are not, they're going away. I mean, people keep budget cuts and people don't think libraries are important or anything else. There needs to be more ability to broaden our horizons and think about the non-traditional jobs. And so I wish that there was more emphasis on the academic side on here's the non-library stuff you can do with this information stuff.
And I actually wish the classes that were available had been required, because
Yes.
I wanted to be a turn of the century librarian.
Yeah.
I wanted to stamp
Which
books.
century?
I wanted to deal with people processes. I was really interested in libraries as social spaces, and I am not doing anything with that. I don't ever see the public. I do work with the same, 530 employees, and so I wish that I had been forced a little into taking a databases class, or because I had the opportunity to just say nah, I would rather stamp books.
Yeah. And I actually had a hard time filling out my electives, filling out okay, I have to get this many credits. There's nothing I really want to take, so I'm going to be forced to take something, or I'd have to skip a semester, or only take one credit this semester instead of, one class instead of two, because I was trying so hard to not be so library focused. So my degree actually ended up taking me a little bit longer than I wanted it to because of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would agree with the more information focused, for example, also kind of instructional, so instructional design. I would have been interested in kind of more things like infographic classes and actually prospect researching, or some of that would be really interesting. Or I don't know if there's a broader way to look at that type of
It's really a lot of public records searching and that
Yeah.
kind of thing, and learning to Boolean queries, because I use a lot of LexisNexis, is super helpful. But databases.
Yeah, kind of like just in a broad information in a broader sense, because I wouldn't say library jobs are going away, but
Yeah, that was the wrong way for me to put that.
no.
Sorry.
I just don't want people to be afraid.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we go through funding issues, but actually, as I learned from Dr. Carmichael, there's always been a history of the library vanishing, going away,
Right,
or disappearing, or I mean, it's a cultural institution and it's always been at risk. But I don't know. At least for academic libraries, there's a lot of cool jobs. Public seems to, it's partly tied to current circumstances at times, but I do think that all those jobs interrelate with more information specialist type jobs. So kind of having more of a marriage of those two would be good. But then I wouldn't have wanted to go completely to the iSchool side either. Like, I like having the librarianship side as well. So I think just more balance with that could help.
In the school system, there is a focus on personalized learning. So I did take instructional design and loved it. I would really like to see there be a dual degree, because that wasn't what I was able to do. But I really want to come back after I finish the MLIS and do the instructional design, because taking that class made me realize that personalized learning is the way it's going. And if the librarian can be helpful with that, then I certainly want to be ready. So in case, something does happen with the school libraries, which I really don't see happening, because just from observing the students, we have a big ebook collection for the county. And invariably the kids come in and I'll say, that's an ebook. I want the book. So I see that a lot, which I was very surprised. I thought they'd be really on board with that. Of course, I realize there's still some training that we need to do with the students, but I do see that being something that should be offered.
Yeah. Also, there may have been a course that has some of this in it, but I did not take, that I wish I'd been forced to take, which is kind of understanding more information science and IT. Like, sometimes I still don't have a good enough grasp of like systems and servers and networks and how they relate, and I have kind of an intuitive from what I've done within those to understand how they work together. I think we have some class that has some of that in it. Yeah. So, again, also my bad on that one. But really, I mean, as we mentioned, we all most of us work with IT either directly or indirectly. So kind of, I've been able to understand their perspective somewhat, but sometimes I still don't completely get it. And also sometimes you could end up in a job where you need to learn to set up a database, set up a server, create a website and host it, like those sorts of things that, I mean, you can hack them, you can Google, you can, work it out, but sometimes understanding that infrastructure can be difficult for my brain, so more of that.
I agree with that.
As the person who's changing everything over
Yeah.
from,
I was
not just how to use it, but how is it doing this, so that when it doesn't work, you can troubleshoot.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Working as an academic librarian, I wish that I had more, I wish I'd had a research methods course and done more. I took a course with you where we did action research course.
I love that.
And that was great, but I wish I had more of that.
Yeah, I could use almost a psych research, but that's kind of what you mean, a research method
Right.
as far. Yeah, because
Yeah,
I don't
social
have.
science. I would have liked a social science research
Yeah,
method,
exactly.
which we probably could have taken.
Yeah, and also
I
the
just didn't think about
statistical, quantitative side of that, because I can do qualitative all day, but quantitative and data, I'm still a little bit like, oh God, I think I know what I'm doing with this. But yeah, so I agree with that too.
Very helpful. YK, are you ready to take some questions? Because I'm going to open this up to questions from people that are either joining us online, in-house here. Got some questions for the panel? Please tell me you have a question.
We can't have covered everything. There's so much.
We teach now, so we'll just stare you down.
I'm still getting used to that. I really hate the long silences.
Yeah.
I have to make myself just,
such a good tool, though.
True.
Come on, guys.
It's a lot of
Okay,
pressure.
Sam's got a question.
It's kind of going back to getting as much as you can out of the program, but in my position, I currently work 40 hours full-time job.
Yep.
That's in a non-library field. So how did you, who were working full-time, how did you manage to get the internship hours or the various projects that you did?
So I found really wacky places to be a librarian. Do you guys know about Elsewhere Artists Collaborative?
Yes.
Yeah. I helped set up their library with an
That's
artist team
awesome.
from Brooklyn. And I worked at the IRC with Julie, teaching, helping set up resumes and trying to teach computer skills. So I found ways that were places that were either non-traditional libraries or not libraries at all to get the skills out of it that I was hoping to get.
Yeah, I think there's more non-traditional hours type positions out there than you might think. Well, not positions, but internship opportunities. Like there's chat staff, so the NC Knows network, you can be like a part-time librarian that does their chat service virtually. I can't say all academic internships have unusual hours, but we're definitely open, much longer than 8 to 5. So sometimes that can be worked out. This is my turn for a plug. Guilford has a new instruction and assessment internship that I'm in charge of, and we have our first intern, Shonda, and she's awesome. And we could have at least some atypical hours, and I think there's some other academic libraries that, probably some of your intern time could be independent or, at off hours. So I wouldn't assume that, or, also volunteer opportunities. So like public libraries, they're quite busy on the weekend. Like Saturday's a big day for them. And so, I think in some cases, as long as you go in explaining what your schedule is like, there's probably, most of us want more people to help us with things. So
Universities are open a lot too. So if someone wanted to come to Guilford College, to Heggie, so can they come in and say, can I volunteer at your private school library?
I think we have some volunteers in archives, but then I think some of the other departments we do more of a formal internship.
Okay.
But I know our archives has some volunteers, and they sit at the desk or help with projects that are.
Or they play with the stuff in the back. I've been to the archives there, and they've got such cool stuff back in the back.
Oh,
All
yeah.
archives have secret cool stuff.
Oh yeah.
A quick note about volunteering, especially if you're volunteering in a small library with a small staff, it is hard to manage a volunteer. Like, it takes a lot of time to manage a volunteer if you don't have a formal system for that. So I know it can feel like you're doing a huge favor to this organization by volunteering your time, but understand that they're also volunteering their time to develop you. So we've just had a couple volunteers who were like, had the attitude of we owe them something, we somehow owe them like a good reference just because they came in, and it was not a great experience. So
Be good volunteers.
yeah.
How about balancing, 40 hours a week with school just in general? Any advice for that?
Not really. I'm sorry, I don't mean it like that. I felt like I had mono for like the whole second year of school.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Like, it sucks, but like
Learn to
be
love
really
Red Bull.
organized, live by your calendar. Sorry, Rachel, what were you
No,
gonna
I was
say?
just learn to love Red Bull. I mean,
Learn to take naps.
something that was huge for me at Wake Forest was having supportive supervisors who understood, I need to leave early to go to school. And actually, the last year I was in the program, they actually let me do a work from home day, 1 day a week, so that I didn't, my situation was of course a little different, having to drive from Winston-Salem to UNCG, but that let me not have to lose 2 hours a day of commuting. Of course, now I'm commuting even further away because I'm working in Chapel Hill because I'm a psychopath. But yeah, I mean, if you are lucky enough, and hopefully you would be, to have a boss who understands that, this is important and I'm trying to, further my education. Particularly in my case, it was this is applicable to my job. This is going to make me better here. any way you can, hopefully you're lucky enough to have a supervisor or a work situation where you're able to have that flexibility.
Also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying that's a very good point. If you have a supervisor who's supportive, your schooling or whatnot, that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
You don't want to go to school stressed out, worried about your boss, how will she feel about this and that. You already have a lot to worry about as far as, schoolwork, and that would just add on to it, so that's key.
Talk to your job or your supervisor about ways that you can develop in your current role and get the skills you're looking for. So I was waiting tables, and I asked the owner of the restaurant if I could observe the vendor when they dropped off food and paid for food and all of that. They negotiated, and so I observed vendor negotiation and was able to talk with a little bit of intelligence about that, coming in as an acquisitions librarian, about being able to have intelligent discussion with a vendor.
Mm-hmm. And that's awesome. I mean, because that comes back to the whole be creative about what you are doing in your daily life, that you can, like, what can you learn and what can you do that you can use in the future. That's awesome. I never would have thought to do that. That's so smart.
Transferable skills.
Yes.
YK, have we got any questions at all from?
No, not any questions at all.
Okay, Dr. Gann has a question.
Back to the interview process. In the cover letter, you talked about that moments ago, but were there any other documents or artifacts that you shared during an interview or ahead of an interview that you thought were very helpful in getting a position?
I included my capstone website.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I included my LinkedIn profile on my resume because it has my whole work history, and I wanted my resume to be shorter and more targeted to the job. So and also my publications, because I used to work in journalism and I didn't want to list them all because that's such a pain. So I included that so they could look at it. Don't bring a lot with me usually, although I did, because I did that study at Guilford, I sent them that after the interview so they could see what I had written. And if I had thought of that beforehand, I would have brought that with, but it came up and I was like, oh yeah, I do have those results somewhere, but I don't know what else I bring.
Don't send your transcript. I don't know why people send their transcripts. I get that all the time, and it is the strangest thing.
It's weird.
Yeah, I don't know why people do it.
You need them like sometimes
You have to
after.
confirm your MLS at some point
Yeah.
for a lot of jobs.
But that's what you have the job.
But I mean, first of all, people are sending like their undergrad transcripts.
Oh.
Yeah, no,
I don't know about
exactly. And with their grades and everything, I'm like, great, I see that you got a D on macroeconomics. Why did you send this to me? Right?
Don't send things they don't ask for.
Exactly.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I think I've had to send a one-page teaching philosophy at some point.
Yeah. Well, also, so you may have to do a presentation or teach for some of these, especially a lot of the academic jobs, especially if you're getting into a teaching or managing role. But I think at other positions too, other libraries that you may have to present or do something.
Not in an entry-level position, not somebody just out of school, but maybe down the road, if you're in a special library or a corporate library, they'll have you do a colloquium.
You know what could be a cool thing for LISA to do, maybe in the spring, to see if folks are interested in giving practice job talks, and then as people, I don't know, maybe that already happens, but as people get interviews, if you had a group of like 10 people who are applying for jobs who wanted to do this, then let people give their practice job talk, and everyone else can give feedback. That would have been helpful for me.
So you practice job talk as opposed to, like, is that different or the same thing?
Like if you have to give a presentation, so not just not the interview necessarily, but I was applying for all these instruction jobs, right? So I would have to go in and like teach a fake session, and so I don't know what the circumstances would be for other positions in the
Check
library.
with Linda Kellum and Amy Howell.
But it is kind of weird when you have to teach. I mean, because I had to ask another person who's already an instruction librarian when I had to teach for my job at Guilford for the interview, because I was just like, so I have to pretend they're students even though they're not students, because that's just weird to me. Like, you're an actual, you teach this, but I have to pretend like you know nothing. So, because I usually do interactive sessions, so I ask questions the whole time, so I had to ask them dumb questions that I know they're going to know because they're not students, or I hope in most cases they would know, like, what's the difference between primary and secondary research, or anyway. So I had to say, I have to do it like they're really the students, and she was like, yes, just everything you would normally do.
It's like role playing.
Yeah. It's a little weird, but you just have to go with it. I was gonna say, well, also just practicing for the interview and, you know, going through those lists of like typical interview questions and good responses. I'm getting better at doing that as I get older. I used to just wing it, but you can't wing it as much as you move on. Also, I do bring my resume because sometimes, you know, you get a little daunted or you're like searching for something to say, and I can look back and like, oh yeah, I did this about this, or I don't know, just your memory may fail you. So it's good that, you know, there may be certain things, like especially your resume, that will remind you of an example of a certain situation you dealt with, or etc. So, you know, it may be worth having some resume or talking points of some sort.
That actually reminds me, whoever you list as your references, make sure that they have a copy of your resume.
And that they know they're listed.
And that they actually know who you are. I actually had a couple of reference calls where somebody was like, oh, I had so many employees. Oh, well, what was her job title? Well, then she probably did this. I'm like, I don't know why this person listed you as a reference. Yeah, just be careful about who your references are. Make sure that they're prepared to actually be a good reference for you. And
that they will be a good reference.
Well, and that's the other thing.
They need to know what your job is that you're applying for,
yes,
so they can speak to those skills.
Yeah. So if you're applying for a bunch of jobs, I typically we don't ask for references until the point that we actually need them. But at some places they want you to provide your references up front. Make sure that whoever your references are, even if you are applying for a bunch of jobs, make sure that they're apprised of, this is a job I'm applying for here. And again, theoretically, your whoever you're applying with will tell you when they're about to call your references. They usually won't do that until you're at like pretty far in the process. Like, let your references know you should be expecting a call from da-da-da-da-da about da-da-da-da-da, and make sure that they have a copy of your resume and your cover letter too, because again, if it comes back to that whole, if you've customized your cover letter to say, this is why my resume doesn't look like much, but this applies to, like, just make sure your references are going to be able to speak in an informed way about you, who you are, because it doesn't impress an interviewer very much to talk to a reference who doesn't seem like they agreed to be a reference a year ago and this is the first time they've ever been called and they had no idea this was happening.
And another thing that's tricky is if you fill out a whole work history.
Oh yeah.
And I don't. Sometimes you have to put all of your managers.
Yes.
And so trying to even tell them, if you can, that, you know, they might get, because I've had people be sneaky and go back calling, like, you know, previous employers, even like from a couple years ago. So yeah, keep in mind that there are additional people that they may, I don't know. I honestly think it was a little bit slimy to do that, because, like, I mean, it was one of those, like, I'm trying to find the dirt, like the insides. And I mean, there's not like a lot of dirt, but like I do feel like there was a slight element of that, or like at least that you should say, by the way, I may contact some additional managers that you've had, and it was fine, but just keep in mind that any of that information you provide, they may go back to contact those people as well.
Yeah. Also, keep it classy. Always send your references a thank you note. They're doing you a favor.
Yeah.
I know that when I went for my interview, I took a lot of the classwork that I had done, and we took a tour of the school, and I had even asked them if they'd heard of Erasmus. And now they're using it for their magnet school tours. They have stations set up, and the students lift up the iPads, and the person who is in that area gives a little presentation via the Erasmus app. So that was really kind of neat.
That's awesome.
Okay, we've got about 15 minutes. We'll end when we end. But another question that wasn't on your list, but where do you want to be? Where are you headed? Ideally, in your careers, you know, I know that's hard because it's sort of like, I can't even do the job I'm doing now.
I just have so many where I want to be.
Okay, but you know, as you've graduated, you're still going to class apparently, as you are doing your jobs, but where do you want to be? Who do you want to be in this profession ultimately?
Well, when I started the doctoral program, I thought, you know, I want to go into library administration after this. Eventually, I want to be the head of the library, right? And I'm still interested in doing that. So maybe when I finish, I could go, you know, run a reference department, something like that. But my research is about international students and their adaptation process to U.S. higher education and academic libraries. And so I have read, all the literature on this. And so now I've gotten very interested in how our universities serve international students, which is to say not that well in a lot of cases. So now I'm kind of like looking a little more broadly. I would be interested in, running the Office of International Services or whatever iteration of that. It's at different campuses. But I think my general theme is that I want to stay on a university setting in some sort of administration. That's my goal. And maybe go abroad again. That's undecided.
I'm going to kind of speak about that question. I did not know. So making the decision of like what I wanted to do with my life before I ever went to grad school was really hard. I think that this is common to library students, that I had a lot of interests in a lot of different fields, and it was hard to know which one I wanted to pick and be in for the rest of my life. It felt really daunting. And so when I finally decided I wanted to be a librarian and went to library school, I thought like, whew, that's done. And now, I'm in a job and I get asked a lot by, I think this is a great program, and I think a lot of people who come out of it are probably identified as high potentials in their organizations, and those are the people who get asked, where do you want your career to go? How do you want to develop? You have to really think about it and know how to respond to that question. I'm not good at that. It's something I'm still working on. But I see a lot of different opportunities. There's not a lot of advancement in my library, so I either want to move out of my library and have an opportunity to run a larger acquisitions department or implement more innovation in libraries, or I want to move out of the library and stay in my organization and do instructional design and be a design faculty member.
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines. I guess, I'd already worked in journalism for 5 years before I got started my master's, so I had some sense of what jobs are like, and I had volunteered at a public library and realized I liked teaching and interacting with people the most. So I think that's been a theme that I continue to want to teach. I'm really liking being more involved like a faculty member, which raises the question of possibly getting a PhD, but that does sound crazy. But I kind of more just know I want to continue to do things that are creative, interactive, involve teaching other people, have kind of a lot of autonomy and room for me to be creative and think things through. I don't think I'm as interested in management. I like people, but I don't know, I think that would waste a lot of my energy that could be better used in other ways. I'm not completely against it, and I mean, I do like managing an intern, but that's kind of different. So I'm kind of more, the librarians, there's a lot of different ways you can go. I like to think of Beth Filer-Williams, who's just left UNCG, which makes me sad. But she started with, oh God, I don't even know which library she did first. She was like a GIS expert and helped people with that, and she was a public librarian, and I don't know, she did a variety of different library jobs, and she was here as a distance education librarian, and actually now I'm forgetting what she's doing now, which is embarrassing.
Oregon? She went to Oregon?
Yeah, I know she's in Portland or near Portland.
Yeah.
I think she helped.
She's at Oregon State doing something.
Yeah. I think she's more in management, doing some sort of overseeing overall library spaces, and I don't know, I can't totally tell you guys, but anyway, she kind of went through a variety of library positions, but they have a lot of the similar core elements, so it's easier for me to define the core elements I like.
I think that I'd like to know more about instructional design and personalized learning and how that applies to being in the library. And also, why not? I'd like to author a children's book and go on tour and retire.
We'll buy it.
Yes.
Heather mentioned management. Since in my role I am managing 2 people and managing a whole program, it really does suck up a lot of energy, and it is one of the hardest things about this transition over the last 6 months is completely redefining what productivity is, because I was used to actually having products and something that I did by the end of the day, and now that I'm making lots of phone calls and all this stuff, I will be incredibly busy all day, and then look at the clock, it's 5:30. I'm like, I have nothing to show for today. So managing is really, it's a completely different beast, and I'm sort of, it's actually interesting. I would have given you a completely different answer if you'd asked me 6 months ago about what I want to do. Because what I thought I wanted was to be the AVP of Advancement Services at Wake Forest. She was over prospect research, prospect management, and over the database stuff, like the actual reporting management of the data and the CRM conversion, which was a cluster. But yeah, conversions are never a good idea. I thought I wanted to do that, and now that I'm in a role where I'm managing, I realize why she was always so busy and never available to us. I just thought she was really bad at time management, and I think she was. But it really, it changes things so much. So honestly, what I am starting to think I'd really like to do is consulting, because then you're the expert. I mean, as weird as that is to say, it's when people are hiring a consultant, there's sort of this understanding of, we're paying you money to be the expert and you're going to tell us what to do, and we're theoretically not going to argue with you very much. That's not always true. But one of the frustrating things for me, one of the interesting things but frustrating things is in my position, sitting there going, this is how you should be doing things. Like, I can see all of the problems with every part of this process, but being powerless to say that to them, because it's just not my role. It's not, I can hint at things, but I can't say outright, what you really need to do is get somebody to clean up your database, because I can't do anything with it. But I can't do that. Like, my job is just to work with their database. So the idea of getting to be in consulting and basically being invited in to stand there and say, here are the flaws in your process. And part of what I do now is interacting with databases and seeing the user interface design, which was something I actually had worked on in one, I can't remember which class, but I actually did a kind of a user interface needs assessment thing with a beta website for MMOs, whatever. Anyway, I want to be more involved in making things work better for people. And making information more accessible to people, and thinking about how people need their information and what's the best way to get that information to them. And I think moving into consulting and working with a consulting firm, or working for one of the firms that sells the databases to people to use them, I'm thinking more and more that that's someplace I'd rather be.
Let's see. Recently, I've started out with, helping out with instruction. I would like to continue to do that. Let's see. Getting our stakeholders to understand that technology can be an improvement to the library. I think that's important as well. You have to get your stakeholders to see the benefits that technology offers, and they're kind of in an archaic mind state still, which doesn't do our library any good for long-term improvement, I think. So it's important to break away from that way of thinking, so to speak. I guess that wouldn't tell me to go back and get my PhD if I were to run the library. So. That could be in the plans in the near future or whatnot.
Okay. Any other questions for YK? Anybody?
Yeah, I have a personal question.
Okay, excellent.
I got oriented to 2 questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Personally, this semester is my second semester. To every MLIS graduate student has at least they has at least 2-year span of the graduate studentship. So usually the summer season is the most important or the most great chance to get a full-time internship or something like that. So currently I'm looking for the internship of summer season. So I'm waiting option is a kind of big city, big library full-time internship, or very close to my town. It's a small town, small regional library. But as a head of a household or dad of a small kid, it should be a hard time to be the full-time internship in a long distance, the intern. So I'm considering get a small town and close to my home. But practically, this kind of small town, the internship, seems not a good career or something like that. That is the most the critical part of the option. But do you have any advice to this dilemma between long distance big town internship and small library internship in the summer season? So how can I get the handling my career if I choose a small town, library internship to showing my career is a good point.
Well, how flexible does it? I mean, it may be that even the situation at the smaller library is flexible and that you can make more of it than it looks like on paper.
Right.
Right. So, you know, if you feel like it's the kind of environment where they're only asking for these things, but you could go in and say, I want to do more than this. I want to do these other things. You know, then you still would have the things that you wanted to be able to talk about when you were interviewing for a job.
Yeah. I also think small libraries present a greater opportunity for real, robust networking where you can form relationships with people and show your strengths and show where you would be a good fit, either at that library permanently or so they can share that information with someone they might know. Larger libraries that have more interns and more volunteers tend to value them less, in my experience, and so I see people coming out of smaller libraries, and we've been through the hiring process a couple times at my library, and I see greater relationships and a lot more subject matter expertise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something that Heather said earlier, maybe a virtual librarianship would be an option.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with smaller libraries. You do more things, inevitably, so that's more experience. And going away and doing a cool internship is great if you can manage it, but I don't believe that has to define, you know, I don't think you have to go away to do something extraordinary. Like, I do completely agree that being more proactive about, you know, taking an opportunity that's local and going beyond the basics of it. I mean, most libraries could always be doing something better or doing something more. So, you know, and most people don't complain when you offer them additional things you want to do for them, if they feel like you can handle it, which you probably can. So, yeah, I would say, you know, if you can't make something far away work, like, yeah, look for ways locally to do more.
I'm going to squeeze in one quick question because
there's a question online.
I've got him. He gave me the questions online. Dr. Chu asked about what you were doing for the future, but we already talked about that. But we did start late, so we'll just answer one more question, then we'll wrap up here. But Molly asked a question about, she's older than a lot of you on the panel, but showcasing past work experience, you know, as relevant. So any advice for, you know, something that seems not related? You talked about customer service, any of that. Yeah. So transferable skills from past jobs to make you sound like, you know, this matters to working in librarianship.
Yeah. Use that cover letter. I'm going to keep beating that drum.
Yeah. I think just finding a way to match some of the skills to aspects of the job you're interested in. Honestly, I think that's a better position to be in than to have gone straight from college to grad school with no full-time job experience. I've seen more people struggle with that. I think you're much better being able to say, hey, I've had this career for this amount of time before I started this, because a lot of it's also learning how to have a full-time job and work with people, teamwork, being innovative, being able to be proactive, being able to manage projects. I think you can speak to a lot of those skills, even if it's not the exact same type of job that you're interested in the future.
Yeah, librarianship is not neurosurgery. It is, there are so many skills that you practice in other jobs that you can bring to this. And one of my coworkers doesn't have an MLIS. She was a biologist. She got into research. She moved into the library, and now she's an archivist and reference librarian at the Center for Creative Leadership. So people take a lot of different paths into this. And
I mean, I can talk about, so I was a competitive intelligence researcher at a law firm, and then I came to UNCG and managed the P-Card program for 18 months, and it was from that I went to Wake Forest. And the P-Card thing was such a detour for me, but I did a lot of things. There was customer service things, there was understanding, learning to speak with people diplomatically, and I also created the online training system that they actually still use here, which kind of blows my mind. And I got to talk about creating, this online training system and learning how to teach people. So you pull out, even if the overall job doesn't look like anything that applies, you can find individual things that you accomplish that you can pull out and say, I did this and that taught me this.
And when you're interviewing, some of the questions, I mean, not every question is going to be about, library resources or instruction or whatever, you'll get asked some of those interview questions, like your strengths, your weaknesses, a time when you had a conflict with someone in your office.
Yes.
And you can pull stories from your entire work history for those things.
yeah, by the time you get to an interview, people just want to know like how painful it is going to be to sit next to you in a cubicle.
Right.
They've already seen your resume. They know what you can do and what you have done.
Yeah.
And so once you're in an interview, like your number one priority is to be pleasant and friendly and warm and open. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget the name of the person interviewing you halfway through, because that did happen. Somebody leaned across the table and went, I'm sorry, what was your name again? I'm like,
oh my gosh.
Really?
Oh no.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Fati, did you have something to tell me?
Dr. Chu says she might have another question that you might have missed.
Well, tell her to ask it fast, because we're at 11:30, and I promised them they could go home. Is Clara asking the question? Okay. Well, I'm declaring us done then, but I want to, tell Dr. Chu Gregory said hello.
Yeah, I already gave you, Dr. Chu said, is what is your future and what are you doing to get there?
Oh, we already answered that
I
question.
already get it.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Do you have
I think
anything
so.
to add to my question about where you wanted to go? Okay. Well, thank you very, very much for coming out on this treacherously snowy day in the South, and thanks to all the people that are here online. It was excellent. You guys gave a lot of good advice, and I hope you enjoyed it. I think you all had some fun chatting. Your torturous years here were useful and meaningful, and your experience has been great to share. So thank you to everybody. You can shut down the electronic stuff. Thank you for the people that, braved the snow to come and showing up today.
Yeah, thanks. It's hard if you don't have actual people to talk to.
I know.
I can't just imagine the ones online. I have to see at least one person I can explain
We could
something
have put
to.
little faces.
Oh, that would have been so creepy.
Random faces.
Why aren't you blinking?
Thank you so much for coming. Really, really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Now turn that all off so they